Good morning, good morning, good morning. Listen, I love it when I can say to everybody, good morning, because it is indeed a good morning. If you get the sounds of my voice, that means listen, you and me both survived and made it through another week. And we're here now, Saturday morning on In Touch News Radio, reality radio, where everybody can be a star so that we can talk about the political issues of the day. And I'm joined in this journey by none other than the wonderful, the magnanimous, sweet Pete Edwards. Good morning, Pete. How you doing today?
Hey man, well I'm here. That means we still got work to do. All of us in the community. A lot of frustration today. So let's get right into the topics. I
Oh,
mean, because I don't want
absolutely.
to be a fire. I don't want to do a lot of fireworks, and we got a lot to
Hey,
talk about.
you raising the stakes for me, Pete, out the box, because So let's do it. Listen, you brought up a topic to me. It may have been a couple months back about the little girl that was killed over in St. Petersburg, and man, I could just hear it. The weight of that issue on your heart. Unfortunately, we have had another shooting. This is just local in Tampa. This time it was a 9-year-old a child with I guess a stray bullet shooting. But when I looked at that issue, Pete, I realized there have been a rash of random shootings victims throughout the country. In Philadelphia, they got 56 incidents of minors being shot. They had the McDonald's shooting not long ago.
In
It just
Chicago,
seems like we got Times Square. So the child got shot, and 6-year-old, I think, got shot in Times Square. What is going on with all these minors getting shot?
All right, let's get right down to the one that happened in Grant Park. Listen, a
Yes.
good friend of mine, you probably remember him. He worked for the city of Tampa a long time, Ralph Johnson.
Yeah, I
And
remember Ralph.
all right, him and his wife, they worked hard for years with the Grant Park Civic Association, all like that, to get the recreation center up and going and improvements there. And there's actually a voting poll in place right now. Okay, so you look at this 9-year-old kid out there just playing, not even involved in everything. And then you got these two gangs shooting at each other, two wannabe gangs, and then he gets killed. I mean, not get killed, but he gets injured. The problem is what I've said all the time. In our communities now, you actually see we don't want to admit we can put it on the white man, we can put it on the proud boys, we can put it on bad policemen and all that other foolishness. When it's their fault, yes, we need to lay the blame there. But these kind of shootings all over the place is our fault. And here's what's happening. Number one, in that neighborhood, Grant Park, it's been a history of gangs and conflicts for a while. But what is not said in our community, I'm talking about within the black community outreach, helping each other out, is the number of families that support through illegal criminal enterprise or their children involved or whatever that support that kind of stuff. Now, people say, what do I mean? Well, the groups that were out there, it's just like the girls gangs that if you haven't seen the Instagram thing, they had some girls beating other girls up at Johnson Court Apartments right off of 43rd in Hillsborough, pull their wig off, all this other kind of stuff, and people just standing around, everybody's filming it and all like that. And it's middle school girls and high school girls. It's awful. It's all over the place. What I found out in my work, and then even working in the community, we have within our community pockets of people that deliberately protect bad actors and gang members and stuff like that in our community. If you say report it to the police, no, I'm not going to do that. If it costs them money because of illegal drug activities or stolen property and the whole bit like that, they're not going to report it. So you've heard me say over and over again, we got to build a backbench of new people coming up, but we can't do it because we protect deliberately the thugs, the miscreants, and I know some of my people that are in the Black Lives Movement and other movements that I speak to and we can work together on sometime. They don't like to hear the word thugs and all like that. But when you got criminals and thugs in your community that a 9-year-old can't even go outside and play in the daytime, and the community protects them because they don't want to lose their financial gain, some of these households and all, That's wrong. That's wrong. It's got nothing to do with white people or anything else. It got nothing to do with the kids don't have no jobs. They got plenty of jobs all over the place. So, what I'm concerned about, whether it's St. Pete, whether it's in Tampa, even the issue with the little girl being shot through the drive-through at McDonald's. The trend is now, whether we like to talk it out loud or not, the trend in our community, a lot of our communities now, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And so when you got family members involved in illegal criminal activity and usage of illegal guns and all like that, the first line of defense is we don't know nothing. We're going to protect our profits or we're going to protect our family members. So an innocent kid, he could have got killed just out on the playground. And when I think about the people in Grant Park that worked so hard, Clint, to bring that community center up, and people don't realize that on 56th Street in Grant Park, you have the west side of the street is actually in the city limits. The east side of the street, right behind Kinley Elementary School, I think, and that
Uh-huh.
is in the county. But the bottom line, what I'm seeing is wrong. We can't justify it. Is that we're protecting criminals, criminal enterprises, and all in our community at the expense of our children. And they have criminal enterprises, whether you're Italian, black, Asian, whatever the case may be. But we've gotten to the point now that it's popular to go on Instagram and everything else to show fights with young ladies that hardly have on any clothes, pull their weaves out and all like that. Everybody filming and clap, clap, clap. And then talk about as if it's a badge of honor for kids to be shot because they're around trying to have a good time. It's wrong. It's wrong. And we are never, and what happens, I'm going to say this and I'm going to stop, Clint. What happens when coalitions of people that could get together and support the black causes, when they see us not doing anything and calling out these thugs and miscreants that don't mean us no good in our community, when they see us not doing anything about it like it didn't happen, then they're not going to put their money and resources and contacts behind us to make us stronger in the black community. They're not going to do it, and I don't blame them. That's
Well, Pete, you hit on a number of things, and the one thing about it all is I've always wondered why our communities tolerate certain things. That's the word I'll use: tolerate. When I was reading about the issue of that young child that was shot, the thing that stunned me was the police were asking for witnesses to provide information. Now, I grew up in the hood, West Tampa, right off Spruce and Howard, and I can tell you this: there were people on my street that could tell you everything that happened 24 hours a day. They knew everything that happened. They knew who was coming, who was going, who
yeah,
got home from work early, what kid didn't go to school, did go to school, what time the mailman came, if the insurance man came on the block that day or not. You name it, they could tell you everything that happened. And I was just thinking to myself, wow, um, if people in that community wanted the police to know who did this, and or they want to do something about it, because there are people over there those people deal with. You mentioned something about the economic piece, and I don't know the necessities of that, but they know who did it.
yeah,
And here's where I'm going with this, Pete, and this is an issue I have within the black community that I think is something that we are slow to deal with. Nobody is coming to rescue people from themselves. If you decide to smoke cigarettes and eat fried chicken and not exercise, there's nothing your doctor can do about that. He can't help. He can't get your health on the right track. And I think that about communities like this, they know absolutely who did or didn't do whatever it is in that community. And if they wanted law enforcement to deal with it, they would make sure law enforcement took care of it. Now, Grant Park has been a mess as long as I can. I've been a part of Tampa, and there are other communities that have been that way, um, and other big cities like certain parts of Chicago and
hmm
Philadelphia. That they tolerated a high incidence of gun violence, criminal activity, and things that just leave the community in turmoil for so long. And my question to you is, what are the political policies that have fostered this kind of environment, and are there political solutions to help and deal with it? Be it resources brought in, leadership. What is it, Pete? You think is the solution that can be brought to these communities to bring some of this violence down?
Well, before you can get to the political solutions, the whole bit,
Hello, Pete.
we got to deal with the instant gratification. It's look, it's profitable now.
Pete, I lost you. I'm going to ask DJ Anna to see if you can get Pete back up and operating. I've lost his volume
Can you hear me now?
for a minute. But this is something that I think across the country um, is an issue. It is in a lot of places where we go that you have um, just all kinds of violence that nobody seems to be able to do anything about.
If you
The big one we hear about is Chicago. We oftentimes hear about Chicago and the gun issue. Now, maybe I'm missing it, or maybe the media is just not reporting it as much. But it looked like there was a time back in, I would say, the early mid '80s when drive-bys and all kinds of shootings in LA were the rage. I don't hear that as much anymore. I do not hear that much anymore. And Pete, if you're back, just let me know.
Well, here's
And
the thing.
because
Can
I'd
you hear
like
me
to hear
now?
your thoughts on what's the solution, though, either be it a political solution or otherwise to this situation.
Look, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, clear?
I can hear you now, but
All
I'm
right,
trying
here's
to
the
think,
thing. The
what's the
political
solution?
solution, Clint, the solution is within that community. I tell people all the time, when you got communities that are profiting illegally, whether publicity or style or through money and illegal goods or whatever, that's the issue. If you got a community that says, "Hey, you know what? As long as I'm getting my break off of the dope money, or as long as I'm getting my break off of protecting them or whatever the case may be, well, if a kid gets shot, so what?" Let me give you a good example. There are some parts of DC that you can go to now. You get off the subway, and I used to go and get off certain parts because I like going into the hood. That's where I'm from. I enjoy it. I would get off and see the Fruit of Islam guys standing right by the subway, right by where the kids had to go to school, where the old people had to go shop. And you know what? They didn't have that foolishness. That was a political and a community solution right there. Hey, we're not tolerating you that live in our community that abusing our kids and our elderly people and all. But the issue right now is that's not stylish points, even for young families and a group. There's a gap between the baby boomers and the 35 and under parents. They it's a gap there that they don't think about protecting the children that are coming up in those communities. And I guarantee you, it won't be the first time and it won't be the last time that you see some issues coming out of Grant Park or even over the Jackson Court Apartment. That thing with the girls that's going on all over internet and everything, and they're pulling the weaves out and the whole bit, and you got five other people with the cameras. That tells me that that's a style that is appreciated in that neighborhood. Because if it wasn't appreciated, you wouldn't have that. So when I looked into asked some of the people around Grant Park when I caught them up at the little plaza, I said, "Hey, what's going on there?" Well, you got the little girls involved. You got the jits trying to control the neighborhood, and we'll get them back, and that's the style right now. How can that be the style when we're trying to hold on and get strong as a black community? But until those people, you can put all black policemen in there, it won't make a difference until those people decide to root out those same black people in that community that are doing our neighborhoods and our kids harm. And until we call that out, and historically, I will say since the '90s, in the black community, we have this trend: by any means necessary, we're not gonna tell on anybody. So our communities just fall apart and the hell with it. And we have to stop that because
So
I,
let me
you
throw
know,
this out to you. Is gentrification of a community like that a solution
no,
where you incentivize other people to move into that community to change not only its demographics, and I'm just throwing this out before I get my nasty emails coming. Is that one of the line? Because I know in Chicago and some other big cities, that is the route that they took. We're just gonna move these people out of here. And I'll say this, Pete, that's not far from what's happening in West Tampa.
that's true, but it won't solve the problem because look, if I'm a thug on the street and I got a criminal enterprise I want to protect, the 9-year-old is just
Watch,
unfortunate.
hold on, Pete. I got you. I got you. You know
Okay,
what?
so
We're
when
gonna move your customer, but we're gonna remove your customers. We're gonna move them out cross Fletcher.
well, the customer is multi-diverse now. Here's the thing: you can have gentrification, and you just get a little smarter. And as the gentrification, more white people or whatever move in, you just try to get smarter and identify the criminal element within the people that are moving in, supposedly to make the neighborhood better, and see how y'all can work together to make profits off the neighborhood. Now that's my thinking if I'm a real criminal coming out of retirement. Okay. Now I mean I'm being
You
for
said we
real
said,
here.
well, hold on, Pete. You said if you're a criminal and if you came out of
Yeah,
retirement.
because I keep it real. I'm just saying. So you can have. I'm looking at parts of Seminole Heights now and all, and moving into parts of East Tampa where the gentrification coming in.
Uh-huh.
Okay, if I'm a gangster on the street, you know what? When I see what's happening now, I change my product. Can't make much money in weed anymore, but I know even with those gentrification people coming in, guess what? They like their pills and they like their cocaine. So I just
Yeah.
have to hook it
Right.
up right to get the connection right, and
I
so
don't
I
know.
can be protected. I'm just saying.
I just think that one, a lot of that is an economic part, and you take that a lot of those kids who grew up in that neighborhood who see that as normalized. And I'm gonna give you. I'm not originally from Tampa. We moved from Sandersville, Georgia, into West Tampa, and I remember when we landed here, we looked out at the street and we thought this is crazy. This is just absolutely some of the things that people did that fostered continuation of some of the issues they complained about. My mom she was big on school. You go to school and you do well. All I can think of all the kids fighting at the bus stop, fighting in school, staying in trouble in school, not trying to learn, and it just baffled me and how they expected their lives to um, prosper if you didn't seize the opportunity that you had. Now I know that we're not going to solve that this morning, but
I
I
know,
know
but
that it's a
hopefully, Clint,
big issue for
hopefully,
you.
we really, hopefully can really, we need to tighten down on what's happening with them. See, if you got a family in your community that don't give a doggone about the lives of little children playing on the playground, you can't have them in there. You can't be their friend. You can't allow them to deal in stolen property, drugs, the whole bit, and say that that's all right because he's a brother or sister. The hell with that. You gotta get them out because the more you allow them to do that, the more greed they have and the more they're
Pete,
going to
but
take
Pete,
over. I'm just saying.
the easy answer for people individually is that individual packs up and moves out. So, but anyway, let me get to my.
Okay.
I got something else. I got to get you on the
All right,
record
let's
on
get going.
before we because we'll be out of our hour with no time at all. But listen, we have been paralyzed with what's happening in Washington, going on with the GOP, and trying to figure out what it's going to be. And so for the last couple of weeks, maybe about 3 weeks, we've been watching this slow execution or removal of Liz Cheney. And they finally did it this week. They removed Liz. Now, I do not agree with the position Republicans are taking on anything, but I do agree that if you're in leadership and the people behind you don't agree with your position, either you got to convince them to go along with you, and if you can't, you got to get out the way.
That's correct. That's
And
correct.
so I thought she had, if they were not willing to follow the direction she wanted to go, I thought she had to go. What do you think about that?
Well, that's with any organization: Republican, Democrat, black, white, women, men. Here's the thing: once you, because you run on a platform that, hey, I can lead this group, and then when it gets to the point that you can't lead or they don't want to follow, then it's time to bring in fresh leadership. And a good example of that is the void in the black community as far as the civil rights movement. For a long time now, people have turned off Jesse Jackson and to an extent Al Sharpton and a lot of those folks. Even from the legal aspect of it, we had a void until now Benjamin Crump and not those young legal guys and women are coming in. So they fill in that void again that the old guard could not reach. That's the young people. That's the millenniums. That's the people that's in blue collar neighborhood. Well, the old guard got away from that, and it was by I. So it's the same. Liz Cheney, she didn't want to go to the extremists. Now she could have profited from the extreme movement, could have bettered herself, but I guess moralistically she didn't want to do that. So what's happening is we talked about the last 3 or 4 weeks, the extremeness of the Republican Party. They're gonna run with it until they can't run with it. And one of the things that they're doing is that they know that a lot of people are running, hiding behind the coattails of the extremists, so they can protect their personal, interpersonal views on race and everything else, and economic development, the whole bit. And then it's a good opportunity. Let's say for me, I'm a businessman, and I hate black people. I hate immigrants that are darker than I am, the whole person. So I can hide behind the extreme right of the Republican Party, and hopefully I don't be exposed for it, put my money there and all, and go on. That happens in any group. And what you're seeing happening now, as I said before, last week, and somebody said, you must be crazy that DeSantis is going to win by 7 points or more. He is going to win because he's got the meanness behind him. And see, what mean people do, when they mean and they really want to show you they mean, they stick with it. And so with Liz Cheney out the way, you're going to see more of it. Now, how is that going to collapse? When the Republicans, extremists, grandchildren, or the ones that are in diverse schools now, they start waking up and saying, no, mom and dad, no, granddad, we're not going for that anymore. So you got to push for that, and then you got to build new coalitions with young people. Why do you think they don't want the critical race theory to be taught in schools? Because they've so long have taught white kids that slavery was all right, we didn't lynch people and all like that. And now with social media and the internet, these kids are finding out that my grandfather, my father, you know what I mean? So there you have it.
Hey, Pete, I just started getting an echo on my end. I know Anna can take care of that real quickly. But
Oh, the
here's
echo.
I'm trying to figure out, you know, being an analyst, I'm trying to figure out, we still get that echo, Anna. If you could work on that for me back in the studio, I appreciate it. But I'm trying to figure out, but so what is the actual agenda? So when Republicans now come out and run for office, what are the, if you're going to be a personality driven party, how do you develop an agenda around that, saying, vote for us because we support Trump? I don't know what's the agenda now. Then, now that you got Liz out the way, okay, guys, what is it you're proposing that the Republicans are going to stand for?
Well, it's easy. It's easy for that extremist in the Republican Party. The agenda is simple. Do we want to be a party that was in power post Reconstruction, or do we want to be a party of American style Nazi Germany? It's only two positions they can take. They're not taking a position that America has to be united and stronger, particularly against Russia and all the things. So I look at it from the perspective, if I was an extreme Republican, the number one goal of the extremists in the Republican Party is to put black people in their place, to eliminate, unless they pro extreme Republican immigrants coming into the country. That's the number one agenda by any means necessary. And they're not going to stop doing that. when you see an extremist group talking about we don't even we're going to tighten up on corporations who've been giving us big money, that's a signal to people that believe in the Proud Boys. They believe in post-Reconstruction America, where separate and non-equal and all of that. So there's only one agenda. Is the agenda is how do we put everybody back in the back of the bus, and we maintain our last bits of power. And if it means hanging people or putting people in jail, wrongfully accused, whatever it means necessary, we'll do that to keep power. Now, here's one lip pin with that, Clint. What happens if America go to war? The way we going, if we go to war with anybody, you're not going to have the country unified to go to war against Russia, Iran, or anybody else. It's not going to happen. So if I'm a Republican extremist, I look at one thing. How do we put those Negroes back on the back of the bus? And how do we stop immigration coming in unless they're high-tech Asian people or unless they're Europeans? That's the goal.
I would say, I would say, Pete, I do not have nearly that bleak of an outlook. I don't think the cat's out the bag a long time ago with African Americans and other minorities understanding and appreciating what their rights are and how to use our system to ensure. Now, we may not get all the benefits that there may be, but I think the continuation of ability of people in America to use the democratic process to gain power is not going to be lost. There are going to be other sides trying to manipulate it like they've always done, but I don't think we're going to be going backwards. I think the fight's going to be won. The racial piece is absolutely correct. Not going to be directed at Black folks. They're going to direct it at immigrants, mainly these folks coming from South America, to keep them in kind of jobs that other folks don't want to do. I think that's going to be the real place that they try to hold people. But you have a referendum on where the Republican Party is going with that Virginia Republican race. The candidate, I can't think of his name. I think it's young something or Youngkin.
Yes.
He won, but he was not the staunch Trump supporter. There were more people much further to the right of him on Trump, and he was able to pull that out. Now he's a Republican nominee. I think that foretells that going forward, I see Donald Trump slowly losing his power. The big thing I think you're going to see, though, is slowly, when the rubber hits the road, when it's time to actually win an election that is anyway in a district where you have moderates and you need independents to win, you're going to see your Republican friends that you all have coffee with, Pete, coming back to the middle. And I think that's going to be, I think, healthy for America and give some balance to the Democrats who think they have a free shot right now at just doing anything they want to do because the Republicans are so disjointed. And I see Anna's waving a flag at me, saying that it's time to take a break. What are your thoughts about? Give me 30 seconds. What are your thoughts about that?
See that happen to 2028. Look, the key is not the people up front. It's the Trump supporters that behind the scenes. They're going to vote, as I told you. The Black community and a lot of the Hispanic community that wants to do right, they don't think about off-year elections. So if I'm a Republican out front, I'm not worried about my Trumpeteers supporting me because I know they're going to be there. It's easy to be behind the scenes and throw your weight around than up front. Do you want to be the king or do you rather be the kingmaker? And we can go to break on that.
All right, let's do this. Let's take a quick break. You're listening to Intake News Radio, reality radio, everybody can be a star. We're going to take a quick break and come back and ask, have you dropped your mask too, based on what the CDC guidelines have just said? We'll be back after this commercial break.
Hey, this is Agent Wright, better known as Mr. Clean. You looking for some great barbecue? Come see them two brothers on the grill, located at 423 Virginia Street, Charleston, West Virginia. We got ribs, chicken, pulled pork, brisket, collard greens, mac and cheese, baby. Come get some and get you a nice, smooth cigar. 304-550-4431. That is 304-550-4431. Come get some, baby. The Rib Man, mama, the Rib Man.
Thinking politics? Tampa Bay Politics is on every Wednesday at 11 a.m. with Angela Birdsong. Tune in right here on In Touch Radio.
All right, we're back live with In Touch News Radio, reality radio where everybody can be a star. My name is Clinton Farris, and I'm the co-host of Straight Up the Middle. Now, I know based on some of the emails I get, some of y'all wonder, well, what do you mean straight up the middle? That's what I mean. We throw the topics out there. We try to keep them straight down the middle of the road with balance. And I do that by having with me my cohort, my partner in truth, none other than Sweet Pete Edwards. Good morning again to you, Pete. How you feel?
My brother, I'm okay. There's work to do, you know.
Hey, now let me tell you, what are you doing with your mask? Or now, have you burned them? You just put them in a drawer?
No.
What's the mask?
I will encourage people to continue to wear the mask. What I'm finding out, particularly, let me look at it from a black male standpoint. A lot of the brothers are finding out because they've had issues with COVID or thing, that they had other issues that they didn't even know about because they didn't get a physical the whole bit. And so as the asthma and some of the other issues have come up, they got to protect themselves. We still got brothers in the 50s and 60s that don't want to take the shot. They say, hey, when God says it's time for me to go, I'm going to go anyway. So why do that? They still bring up the Tuskegee experience and the whole bit. So I encourage the brothers, look, get checked out. There's so many ways you can get checked out that doesn't cost you anything on a lot of black male issues. And then pray about your decision to wear a mask or not. I'm wearing mine because when I look at some of the guys that I hang with, I want to see them be strong all the way up to the end of time. Okay? So they have issues with pneumonia and don't know they have it and all. So I say, hey brother, there's so many colorful masks that are healthy now. Wear the mask. Encourage the young people now. I'll give you a good example, and maybe the radio audience is not going to like this example, but it's a true example. We see young brothers that won't get checkups, they don't believe in colonoscopy checks at 35, they don't believe in prostate checks at 35 and all, okay? Now, they can party with the best of them. They say, I'm young and the whole bit. They won't wear a mask and all. And while they're partying, then the first thing they want to do is say, well, I'm young enough, I'm healthy enough, but I also want some Viagra too. Now, I'm just keeping it real with that, okay? You see where I'm going with it? And I'm saying, why would you do that when you don't need to do that, but you just want to be hip? So what's happening now with the mask issue in our community among the black males that I've talked to, well, it doesn't show my features. I had somebody tell me that the mask, he's got to wait till he get the right mask on, because the mask that they give to wearing the little blue ones and all is not attractive enough. Now, what the hell that got to do with your health? But I mean,
okay. So the CDC says, new guideline: if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask indoors or outdoors.
But how do you know who's fully vaccinated or not?
Well, no, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you.
Okay.
If you're fully vaccinated, you now move over. Most of your businesses, Costco, Walmart, a bunch of companies have come out and said, you don't have to wear a mask anymore if you come in our store. So I think very quickly the culture is going to shift. I think people still do their social distancing and be a little cautious about getting all up in everybody's face. But very quickly, I think you're going to have this, I wear a mask and I don't wear a mask, but I don't wear a mask now because I'm fully vaccinated, as opposed to I don't wear a mask because I don't believe in the vaccine. And suddenly, here's what you get. They're going to mix in the vaccinated people with the anti-vaxxers. And I think that's going to piss off the anti-vaxxers.
Well, let me throw a boomerang on that, and you're going to enjoy this from a legal standpoint. If I'm Walmart or Costco, once the CDC said, hey, you don't have to wear a mask and all like that, and with the laws that are protecting the stores and the businesses who get immune from being sued for COVID, that's a win-win for me. You follow me?
Yeah,
So
but
I
you
can,
came with it.
yeah. So I can hire you as my lawyer to represent me that Walmart gave me COVID because they didn't enforce the mask thing and they had
Listen,
no idea. You know, I'm just saying.
I'm gonna say this, and I've gotten a number of calls. It's on the record. I can't imagine how you win a COVID case because it takes a lot more than circumstantial. I was near you. We were in the same house. You got COVID, therefore I got COVID. Or I was at a store and I left the store.
Mhm.
You would have to actually watch me now. You would have to actually test live COVID virus from the person who had COVID and the person who says they were infected by that person to definitively prove it. And the reason I'm saying that is that's what comes out in like herpes cases
Oh
or
yeah.
AIDS cases. You have to actually test both viruses and verify they're the same strain. By the time I think you get around to that, I think the strains mutate. In my mind, it would just be a nightmare. And I've litigated viral transmission cases, and it is an absolute. There's only one or two experts that can almost get you what you need. It's a nightmare. But
It
I
is.
just think that what's going to happen from what we've got in our community right now, Pete, is people use things to identify their political position. The maskers, trying to say it was more Democrats wearing masks than not. More Democrats getting the vaccine than Republicans. Republicans holding out and vaccine hesitant. But by now dropping the mask for the vaccinated or the Democrats, they now look like the vaccine hesitant or deniers.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to fight now. They got to figure out another way to identify themselves.
Well, I tell you, one of the key things that you got to look out for in a study. They're beginning to open up the vaccine for teenagers. I think 12 to 18 or something.
Down
like
to 12
that,
year
okay?
old. 12 year.
So you know as well as I do, you have to have a definitive study of at least 6 to 18 months out to see how effective, how non-effective it is, how the variants
Right.
that are coming from other parts of the world. When I look at what's going on in like a country like India, a lot of those people are traveling. When I look at some of the variants coming out of South Africa, well, they're coming to America. So from that perspective, I have no idea whether they've gotten tested, whether they've had the shots or whatever. So when I see them, that I can properly identify them because of their looks and all, then I said, well, maybe I'm gonna wear my mask in precaution until I get to know that person better, to see what their take is on health. And so it's a touchy situation. But remember, you as a lawyer, you know that last bill in the legislature that the state of Florida that put that limited liability on restaurants and all like that. When you go into the details of that bill, Clint, I mean they've set it up that even if it's the restaurant fault, you can't. You just got. I mean, it's a no-win situation. So we'll see. But I think the key is for us is going to be what is the take on getting young people to take the shot. It's just like the job issue. They have a lot of jobs out here, right? And so what has happened is a lot of these people aren't getting unemployment compensation. They just didn't want to go back because of the health issue. And then they realized that because of the pandemic, it has opened up the door to help them demand from companies and restaurants that people get paid more per hour. Now, the other side of that is that a lot of the jobs are going unfilled. You know why? Because the employers, the big companies, the little restaurants and all like that, they're not reaching in the communities where we got a workforce ready to go to work. And I mentioned it last week, they're not reaching black media to advertise about all the jobs opening and whatever like that. So I'm of the opinion that while their jobs opening, people don't want to work because they want to make sure the health thing is right. But also the companies is using the excuse about the unemployment thing because they don't really want a diverse workforce. Now that's that militant side of me. That's that Malcolm
Well, yeah, I was
X
about to
side.
say, Pete. Now wait a minute.
Yeah,
Wait a
yeah,
minute.
that's that Malcolm X side of me. They not advertising in our community. I talk to kids all the time and people
Yeah,
coming
but
out of
now
it, they not advertising.
You can't drive by a fast food place that doesn't have a sign outside saying, hiring. And money is green. And as an entrepreneur, you can't afford in this day and age of our level of diversity if you selling tires or watermelons to discriminate.
Well, they
'Cause
do.
it's
They do, even in the
well, they
placement.
may. I think this. I think differently. I think you may get a different level of service from an individual. They may not be as attentive, and your waiter may not be as responsive to you. Things of that nature. But you're gonna get seated and get a table. I think that there's a different dynamic to it, and this is individual. And now we're dealing with, I think, how do we deal with people's hearts when it comes to discrimination and treating other people different than they normally will. I'm gonna give you a little situation that I had the other day, and I'll put this out there in the public. Anybody's welcome. The Kappas gathered at a place at a Brain and Berry on Henderson on Friday afternoons around 3 o'clock. You walk in there, it's 10 to 15 Kappas. A Kappa owns the place. Kappas come in there, they go there first, and then they go from there to several other Kappa owned establishments in Tampa.
Okay.
Well, you have South Tampa folks in there, down off Gandy and down in I guess Plan and all that area. They come in there. Sometimes they're a little surprised to see that many black men gathered up, yucking it up, hanging out, talking, that kind of thing. But they quickly recognize we're just there doing what we're doing. They do what they're doing, and invariably everybody functions and gets along well, and the business thrives. So I don't think that's gonna be the thing I think we need to worry about. I think the issue I think ultimately is gonna be what kind of political policies start to influence coming out of this virus and these restrictions, where the opportunities are.
Well, you still got bias. I give you a good example. All these restaurants downtown Tampa, right? More and more of them come. But do you know what the one thing they're consistently unified on, even though they got a shortage of gig workers, a shortage of waitresses and all like that? You know what the obvious thing that's in plain sight, that's obvious to everybody if you look at it from a purely objective point of view, they don't want to hire black waiters and waitresses.
I would agree. Now, I would want to, before I accept that, I may look at it on the surface and say, well, I'd have to know how much recruiting is being done, and then who's applying for those jobs.
They don't
Because
recruit.
because I'm going to tell you this: in the legal community, there are places where you don't see black lawyers. You don't see them, and the first thought would be, well, there may be industry issues in that area. But then when you go look deeper at what the situation is, you find out the main cause of that is black lawyers. They don't want to be in that arena. They've chosen something else that they want to do. And in America, we have free will. So you may have people that, hey, look, I don't want to wait tables at upscale restaurants in downtown.
Well, I give you a better example of that. You work for city government. You work for
Yeah.
government. So let me throw this out there. Another part of my militancy this morning, because
You own that militant thing today.
yeah. Here's a good example. The city of Tampa, in the previous administration, leased out city property to restaurants. Okay, Curtis Hickson, the little seafood place across from the convention center, and a couple of other spots they had. But guess what? As part of that lease, they didn't require them to be diverse in hiring. So you got these restaurants leasing city property, but then they're not required to even take a look at employing waitresses and waiters of color that are qualified. So my thinking is, wait a minute, we give you a break to have a restaurant on city property, and then we look the other way or don't even push for you to be diverse in your hiring. So when, let's say when the Kappas come to Tampa and they go across the street to Harris Seafood Place or whatever, and they don't see no black waiters or waitresses there. That's crazy. So I'm supplementing as a taxpayer a restaurant on city property that don't believe in diversity. Why in the hell am I paying? Why am I letting the taxpayer money give them restaurants a break to lease out city property, and they discriminate? Now you can say all you want. If they wanted to really be diverse, you got In Touch, you got black media in the area, but they don't want to do that, and
You're right.
They don't push for that. We don't even push for it.
We have not in Florida, and I know in Tampa, created a culture where the normal functionality of existence requires you include diverse opportunities. And if you don't, somebody's going to scrutinize you, or you're going to be the outlier. You go to other cities, that's understood as you move along. That's your culture. And if it's not part of your culture, you're gonna get hurt economically for not having that.
Well, we're gonna see that in West Tampa soon. We're gonna see that in West Tampa soon. You know that, right? Give you another example. They're getting ready to put in our favorite West Tampa. They're gonna put a brand new Publix on the corner of North Boulevard and Main Street. Okay, I guarantee you, I'm confident on this bet, the odds of putting a black manager to run that Publix is like 1 in 1,000. So, and the reason why I say that, because when you go to Publix, it's all over Hillsborough County. How many black store managers of Publix that you've seen? I know only one down in Riverview by where your office is. I think that's the only brother I know. Now, they got a couple of them assistant managers on. And here's the thing, people brag about Publix involvement in the community, but let's not forget, they had to be sued because they had a horrible track record of equal opportunity in the past. You remember that lawsuit?
Again, I'm just saying. We're getting the culture. You're right. If you don't have so for them, because Tampa doesn't have a culture of accountability for its diversity, they can get away with that in theory.
And it's a liberal town, supposed to be liberal.
Nobody at a high level is going to ask, hey, why are you addressing it this way? And what's your plan to make these things happen? Now, when they open the store, if they don't do it and they're protests and boycotts, then they'll get the message, the accountability piece. And Winn-Dixie and Kroger and everybody else will see it and go, hey, that's not a good look, But think about it. You don't have in Tampa, not only Publix, I know that was an African American community was down on down on Nebraska, the old Publix that was down there.
Yeah, he was there for a minute. And so what you have, see, when you talk about expectations, that brings to my point all the time. Cities that you think are liberal aren't necessarily liberal. They put a facade on, and Tampa is one example of that. They have a black guy that's in charge of bringing in new business and all like that, but you've never seen them. You never read not one op-ed piece from him in black media that says, "Hey, this is what I'm trying to do as we diversify the companies coming to Tampa and how to reach the black community." The companies that come in, they don't reach out to the black community. You look at governmental officials, it's a superficial, it's a fake. It's a fakeness that people really believe that Tampa is liberal, but we're not liberal. And we don't force nobody to do that.
Hold on for a minute. Let me say this. So you've had 3 of the last 5 mayors have been women. That's liberal. 3 of the last 5. Pamela Oreo, and I'm drawing a blank.
Sandy Freeman,
Jewish, not only woman, Jewish woman, and now we have a woman who's gay. I think that's pretty liberal on the front end.
But it doesn't necessarily mean exclusion of African Americans.
Now, the translation of that into practices is where we've fallen short, because I think at the administrative level, the executive level, they've allowed those people to not be accountable for the level of diversity. I want to give a shout out on that point right now. City Attorney Gina Grimes was out at a social event and just so happened to be talking to a lady who mentioned, my son is in law school. And Gina Grimes chased that young man down. She found out who he was. She found out where he was going to school. She reached out to him, and she has invited him to connect with the city attorney's office here in Tampa when he gets back off his internship, in her efforts to bring in some diversity. I thought that was a long
she's
way
good
to go.
people. She's good people. She is a type of city attorney that know how to reach different groups of people within the city. I'm looking at this controversy they got now with Invictus and related over this this bid over in West Tampa, the Rome yard rebidding, got Joe Robinson tied up, all of that. The lead attorney for the city of Tampa is a black woman. I remember that young lady when she started working for the public defender's office, and they had her working in the juvenile division. Now she has been working for the city of Tampa for a long time, but she's the lead attorney in that case. I'm proud of her.
Is that Susan Johnson Velez?
No. That's her last name is Hargret.
Hargret. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
Okay.
Susan's down there too. But so
she's married to Jim Hart's son.
yeah, you give credit where credit is due. But one of the issues that we keep looking at, there's a white liberalism, and then there's true liberalism. And so if it looks on the surface that, oh, Tampa's a big liberal city, it is as far as progressive and upper income white liberals. But when if it doesn't reach down to the masses of blue collar moderates and blacks and Hispanic liberals, then it's a facade, because that's why you don't have the support. That's why it's a photo op, but it doesn't necessarily mean it has a foundation, a solid foundation. So
let me ask you this, Pete. Let me ask you this. First of all, I want to say that I just got a text message from somebody that says, forget what you're talking about, Clint. Pete is making a great point about hiring minority staff and representation, and we need accountability. Now, I want to give an attaboy. Somebody out there is listening to you, Pete, and they agree, and they think I'm full of hot air. But let me ask you this.
You're a lawyer, so you as you build up your case, you know that as a lawyer, you have to look at facts a little different to win your case. I just look at it from an honest, objective, no dog hunt in the race, that kind of stuff.
I think this is something we might want to come back to, because I think it's kind of along the lines that you bring up is this whole argument. A lot of people make that the Democratic Party has bamboozled black people into thinking you're actually making progress, when in fact, nothing is really changing under their leadership in certain situations.
They have. If you look at it, believe it or not, to an extent, Al Sharpton has been co-op. But that happens in any leadership role, for a lot of people, whether they're white, black, or whatever, because as you get more in tune with the establishment, that happens, okay? So when you look at the void that we have just locally, I mentioned it before, if you compare Tampa and St. Pete within the black community, the community in St. Petersburg is way more united than the community in Tampa.
Yes.
They don't necessarily agree all the time, but I assure you, if Tampa had the cooperation of all the elements in the black community like St. Pete has, we would be better off. Now here's the limp hint for that. You're gonna find out with this mayor's election coming up in St. Pete and what the Rays are trying to do with that redevelopment. You're gonna see who are still believing in the black community or who's still trying to toot their own horn. You know why? Because I'm gonna predict this right now. When you look at all of the plans for that redevelopment, the gas plant area and all like that, they're still talking about the Rays staying there. And the Rays have no inclination to be more diverse in the black community outside of the superficial way they've done already. So it's this thing with the redevelopment in that area, though, it's going to expose how many black leaders have sold out, or not necessarily sold out in their opinion, but how many have felt that they can benefit more by looking the other way and let the raise come back, and instead of 1,500 affordable housing units, you have 150 units. And the key part of it is going to be when you look at what is affordable housing versus workforce housing, how much of the see white liberals, the first thing they say in the black community, we need to put more art. So I know we got to wrap it up, but that's something we got to look out for in the future. What's going on in St. Pete, my brother? And
Absolutely. And people, I know that we're a national show. The issues that you see in your community, they're the same everywhere. So everybody can pick something and benefit from that. Pete, as always, I love our conversations. I feel so inspired when we talk, and I get my therapy session in, and now I can go out and face this crazy world. I just want to thank everybody who tuned in this morning. Thank you behind the board there, DJ Anna, for keeping us on track. This is In Touch News Radio, reality radio, where everybody can be a star. Stay tuned for The Sole Purpose, which comes up right after this show. All right, Pete, have a good week. We'll see you next week.
All right, my brother.